Hey everyone, glad you're tuning in with us today. Thank you for being with us. I'm so excited about our conversation today. Regina Alhassan is here with us. She is the research pro, and I'm looking forward to having this conversation. So get settled in, and we're going to get started here in just a couple of seconds. I don't even have my coffee. It's coffee talk. I have water. I don't know what you have. What do you have? Right? I guess it's kind of past coffee time at this point, huh? It's a nice sunny day out there. We get so used to the gray skies. The sun every now and then is an anomaly in the winter. It's so welcome.
Yes, yes.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get started because this 30 minutes flies by so fast. And I know that Regina has a lot to share with us. So, officially welcome everyone for tuning in and thank you for being with us. And we hope you find the session today helpful. I know you will. I'm so excited to have Regina Al Hassan. Did I say that right?
Alhassan. Yep.
Alhassan. Oh my God, I knew I was going to butcher that when the time came, even though I practiced. I'm so sorry. With ResearchPRO LLC. And today we're going to talk about prospect development, DEI, industry practices, industry culture, and how we lead the charge to center generosity. So, welcome, Regina.
Thank you, Libby. I'm so excited to be here and part of the conversation today.
Great. I'm so appreciative of you being willing to spend some time with us today and share your wisdom. So, CEO of Research Pro, Regina enjoys helping nonprofit leaders reach their highest goals. With total dollars identified in the billions, her work as a prospect development legend, and she is a legend because I've heard so much about her since I heard about her, to fuel multi-million dollar charitable giving campaigns across the United States. With a long history of industry leadership and current faculty for Apra Fundamentals, Regina is also an award winning artist. I want to talk about that. Writer, philanthropist, and TEDx speaker. So thrilled beyond belief to have you here today.
Thank you.
Um, and I'm Libby V, nonprofit champion and founder of Libby V and Associates. And through visioning and strategy work, leadership coaching, development support, and organizational and board development, our nonprofit leader clients successfully raise more money and have more impact. But not all of you can afford to hire a consultant. So I created the Nonprofit Coffee Talk as a way to provide great content, helpful information, exposure to great folks that you might want to work with, like Regina. And I hope you find it useful. So if you have any suggestions for topics, please let me know those. You can put them in the chat. You can message me separately on one of the platforms. Please ask questions today. It's always more interesting if you're engaged a bit and ask some questions. No questions are off the table, so feel free to put those in the chat. So with that, I'm going to get us started because we have a lot of territory to cover. I feel like research is one of those elusive, sort of scary topics that people aren't quite sure why, how, when, what to do with it, all those things. So I can't wait. And I know I'm going to learn today too. So, how does our industry minimize giving and generosity currently? You talked about, really centering that notion of um, or generosity in general, I guess, not donor generosity, generosity in general. So, how do we get it wrong?
Yeah, so I hesitate to just like we get it wrong, but there are opportunities to get it to do it better.
Good.
So I think there are a number of ways that we miss the mark sometimes. So certainly one way within prospect development and prospect research, one thing that we are challenged by is the way that we prospect, just cold prospecting. A lot of times we're looking at wealth and we do that. We start to look at wealth. One of the first starting points is zip code. And so then we're looking for property values, etc. And we miss the mark in a huge way when we do that. It's absolutely necessary. It's one of my go-to tactics, like, hey, how do I need to find people in this area that have wealth of a certain amount, especially when we're building out a major gift pipeline. But we absolutely do. I recognize that I'm guilty of this when I practice that tactic, that I am overlooking people that live in other areas. I'm overlooking and forgetting, not even forgetting, I'm overlooking and playing right into that legacy of red line districts, and the legacy of how different populations have been excluded based on their perceived value within the larger community. So that's one way that we miss the mark, and there's lots of room for improvement there.
That's great. I mean, it's not great. You're right. It's a real missed opportunity. And it fits right into this whole sort of, I don't know what I would call it, a, a focus or an awakening of being a lot more, uh, equitable and accessible in our work. And I love that it's sort of centered in that. How do we do this better? Kind of, I'd love to hear, what you recommend for folks who are looking at doing this to sort of help inform their approaches to their development in their organizations. What are some suggestions that you have to get this right?
Yeah. So when we're talking about, especially as it relates to diversifying our donor base, I think there are opportunities for us to lean into the best practices. So if someone is supporting you, so let me take a step back. First, let's look at our universe. Who's already in our world? Who's already supporting us, volunteering, making donations, advocating, etc. Who's already in our universe and doing a very good job of engaging those people. So we struggle with that as organizations. And when we are talking about the ways that we then engage non-white audiences, because when we talk about diversity, oftentimes that's what we're talking about. Non-white audiences are audiences under the age of 30, regardless of their ethnicity, etc. Um, when we miss the mark in general with our engagement, when we're already not doing the best practices when it comes to donor and constituent engagement, those other groups that we already have a disconnect with, it just widens the gap. And so I'll give you a really good example. I know a donor, a colleague who is also a donor. I did an interview with her for one of my dialogue series, but she shared that, her husband had made a five-figure gift to an organization that they believed in. Well, first, the thank you letter didn't come right away. Second, they didn't hear from the organization over a year or more until it was time to get the next appeal letter. And the appeal letter asked them to renew their gift to support something that they never supported to begin with. So no
Oops.
one ever asked or sent a survey or a thank you or a phone call or anything to say, how did you hear about our organization? What are you passionate about as it relates to our mission? What's your vision for transformation? What do
Mhm.
you care about? What are we doing that you care most about?
Yeah.
That should have been evident in the gift designation.
Yes.
It was somehow overlooked. And so that is a really good example of there's someone. I don't think we always have to do a lot of work to attract new audiences. I think we do our work authentically as we normally would. People will come, supporters will come, but then we have to do the work to engage them. And if they are already falling in the category of diverse, whatever that means for you, being very mindful not to allow that gap to widen sort of on your watch. So again, leaning into the best practices is how I see that we address some of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And we often give lip service to not being transactional in our approaches, because we often say that we're being relational and focused on engagement, but there's often this push to raise a certain amount of money, and the focus begins to be on that. How do I get that money raised, right?
Yeah.
And that's the easiest part, but engaging people authentically, genuinely, in a really meaningful way to them is sometimes gets lost in the shuffle.
I'll push another perspective as well, or another approach. So oftentimes what I see and what I'm hearing from my colleagues across the country is that there are nonprofit organizations, especially like arts and culture organizations, the history museums, the science museums, the art museums, the go-to cultural spots, etc. Oftentimes those are not located in the wealthy communities. Oftentimes those facilities physically exist within um, what we think are lower class neighborhoods, what are typically non-white neighborhoods, or mixed neighborhoods. When I was working as an employee for nonprofits, I would often hear those neighborhoods referred to as the sketchy neighborhoods. But yet these are where the institutions are located, right? Um, but at the same time, there is very little engagement with the immediate neighbors.
Yep.
And so I have seen this throughout my entire career in board meetings, in executive leadership strategy meetings. We're talking about how do we engage constituents, how do we engage prospective donors. We never, ever, ever discuss the neighbors.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of
Wow. Right.
assumptions involved in that.
Yeah, that is such a profound point and so obvious, right? And just like I just had like a
Yes.
yes, you're absolutely right. And so, that's got to be deliberate and intentional too, right? Of valuing the people who live around the cultural organizations and engaging them. Do you have
Yeah.
suggestions for, what did you do? What did you see that worked? Like what do you recommend? I just love this conversation.
Yeah, again, I think it's the authenticity. If you're going to invite people in, be authentic. If you're going to survey people and ask them what their opinions are about something, share the results. Be transparent about what you plan to do with that information. Come back and report back out and make them real partners in your engagement. So
Yeah.
that then requires us within the organization to have a shift about the way that we value people.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that is, then we're getting into the way we value people based on race and ethnicity more often than not. And oftentimes, organizations are challenged by having that conversation. Or it's just easier to say, I see this too. I've seen this happen. I've been in the presidential suite and heard this happen when the community, the surrounding community, the immediate neighbors are saying, we don't want this particular development from you in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then I've heard the president say, well, our board is okay with it. Our
Oh.
members are okay with it.
Oh.
Our top donors are okay with it.
Oh.
We're proceeding. And that's fine. You can make whatever decisions you want to make,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's a reality that happens often across our industry. And I think we have to be realistic with ourselves. We, like you said, the lip service. We can't give the lip service and then in the presidential suite, in the executive suite, in the board meetings, we're operating in a different way.
Yeah, there's frequently a real frequently, I would say most often, and you can weigh in on that because you know more better than I do, but those people that are affiliated with that cultural organization, the board, the people who donate, donors, and who visit and who are a totally different group of people than the people who are right there,
Yes.
living in the neighborhood. And um, it's it's a worthy endeavor to engage those people as well. I've seen one arts organization do this extremely well, where they had just a new CEO who was like, "We're changing this. We're changing it. We're going to change how this looks and feels," and just did it. But that took, you know, having staff that were reflective of the neighborhood, you know, and board members and people, artists, and valuing and just shifting it completely. And it happened in a year, less than a year. It's not impossible. It just needs to be intentional.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you called out the artist because I see that how artists can be a bridge many times and can be that
Yes.
sort of go between the institution and the surrounding community. And that's
Yeah.
just one way that you can demonstrate value, authentic value for a
Yeah.
community's culture, whatever that culture may be.
Yeah. 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 You can't, you know, representation matters. And, you know, going into an art center that does not have anybody but white, you know, artists, then, well, how do you expect to get people interested in the art who aren't white? It's just, it needs to be changed. So, okay, so let's see. I loved all this conversation. So, what other recommendations do you have for, you know, how we sort of raise up generosity in a meaningful way?
Yeah. So I'm really, really interested in like the Giving USA report comes out every year, and I think the last one, like 55 or 56% of Americans were giving, and I'm always interested in that other almost half. Like,
What are they doing?
yeah, what are they doing? Because I don't believe they're doing nothing. I think they're doing something, and we're just not. We're missing it within our industry. I don't have a perfect answer about how we do better. One of my answers is to continue to have conversations like this where we can call out and kind of hold a mirror up to ourselves like, what are we doing here? What's our default? And I don't think I like to assume the best in people. I
Mhm.
think oftentimes organizations do things just because that's the way it's been done without, sort of by default, you take the plan from last year, the plan that you inherited as a new person, etc., and you just roll with it. But I think if we are able to just kind of like pause, do that self reflection. Are we connected to our immediate neighbors? Do we have affinity groups or some sort of associations, ways to pull in different types of people? Do we have a
Mhm.
young professional association? Do we have a, I don't know, Latino American association or, an indigenous people association, depending on your organization
Yeah.
and what works within the scope of your mission. But do you have something, or when I go to your website and I look up your board and staff, is it homogenous? When I look at the volunteer pictures, are those homogenous?
Mhm.
And we already know the answer to this. Like
Yeah.
some people, some organizations have gotten savvy and they,
Yeah.
use the pictures of people of color or whatever,
Yeah.
but sincerely, what is happening? What's the
Mhm.
reality at your organization? If I come to your organization, am I going to be followed around the gift shop?
Yeah.
Am I going to be welcome in the cafe? Am I going to get the same, you know, oh, thanks for coming in. Come on, we're so happy to have you today. Am I going to get that? Like the people ahead of me in line? And so I think there are small things that we can do. And I'll tell you who
Mhm.
does a really good job with this. We're in Columbus, Ohio, so there's Philanthropy Ohio,
Yeah.
which does a really good job with centering inclusion and equity for their member organizations. So they have a number of resources. I had a colleague at Ohio Health. She's now in Oregon, but Ohio
Yeah.
does a really good job
Yep.
of centering inclusion and equity.
Yep.
And when I think about like an institution, another sort of cultural institution, the Columbus Metropolitan Library comes to mind.
Hmm.
They do somehow, like they have found the magic.
They have.
And I think what it is that it's authentic.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
each branch represents the community.
Hmm.
Community is actively engaged.
Hmm.
And I do feel that like there is a sense of everyone's welcome to the library. The library is
Hmm.
equal and open to all. It
Hmm.
doesn't matter what your zip code is or what your parents do or anything like that. So those are a few organizations that are doing it well and seem to
That's
have
great.
a grasp on
Yeah.
what that could look like.
Yeah. There's a lot of research, and experts talk about trust is the basis of donors and donations, right? And all this contributes to that, right? That, oh, I see people like me, oh, they are really trying, right? Like just you naming these organizations, like these organizations are doing it. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden one day they snapped their fingers and had it perfectly done. They just started doing it, right? They just started at some point to say we're not doing this in the right way, and let's figure it out. And we all just need to do that. We all just need to start, right? Get started and really challenge yourself. um how do you think they got there? How do you think they got started? How do you what do you think the sort of the a starting place is, and
Yeah.
for organizations?
Well, one thing I use myself as an example quite a bit. Like, look at me as a prospect. So I'm African American. That means that according to research, I'm part of the population that gives the most money away throughout the year.
Yep.
That means that I check all the boxes for a well qualified prospect. I
Yes.
give the most. I'm more likely to increase my giving. I participate in generational giving. So all of these things, like, oh look at me. That's me. I'm a
Yep.
business owner. I'm a
Yep.
nonprofit employee. I have a fundraising background. All of these things, but I'm very often not on a prospect list. And
Yep.
so I use myself as an example because I think about what would it take to get in front of me.
Hmm.
So there are one, find a business list. Every county, I know in Ohio, the counties throughout Ohio have a list of minority owned businesses.
Yep.
Most of them, like the MBE, the WBEs, etc., you're able to download that list. And I shared that idea with someone recently, and their response was, "But those business owners don't have money."
What?
And oh, okay, well, this list
Why would you say that? Why would you just
exactly. There are a lot of assumptions going on, and so it's
Mhm.
hard to uncover those assumptions until we have conversations like this.
Mhm. True. And you have to be willing to have those conversations,
Yep,
and say stupid stuff, and be okay with being challenged and really thinking about what you're saying and your own assumptions, right?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. There is a black-led nonprofit about a 3-minute walk from my house. I have to pass it every time I go to the donut shop. So, but that particular CEO, that president, executive director, doesn't prospect within the neighborhood
Oh.
because
Mm.
she's serving the neighborhood. She's
Oh,
serving
so
the
mhm.
neighborhood of people that are like, I don't know, that are not wealthy, um,
Mhm.
people in dire needs, etc. And so we've had the conversation a few times about like I'm waiting for the letter because I believe in what you do. Like I want something.
Yep.
And she's, it's just like, no, because it's our neighborhood and there's not money here. And
Yeah.
it's like, ooh, I'm a major gift prospect.
Yes. Right there. Right there.
And I'm
A
saying that.
neighbor.
And so you're
Yes.
still not even going to take the time to. And so again, there are these assumptions. And so one thing that in using myself as an example, I'm like, what if we just, for the heck of it, did an A/B test and prospected in a different zip code, one of the
Yep.
sketchy zip codes? What if we did that?
Imagine.
Yes, because everyone doesn't want to live in the suburbs.
Right. And people with modest incomes give more than wealthy people.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, that's the other stat, right? I mean, that's still a statistic, right? That's still a real thing.
We get caught up in the major transformational gifts, the $1 million gifts, the 5 million, the $100,000 gifts, even, and those are absolutely important. I'm all for comprehensive giving. If you've ever attended one of my webinars, you know I like big gifts.
Yeah.
But when we talk about sustainability, when we talk about inclusive giving, when we talk about embracing the generosity that it already exists, then we have to confront some of these things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the value of your work doing research for people is absolutely different than what they're going to get. This is what dawns on me, right? Having this conversation is, yeah, I could go through my CRM and pay for one of the research, companies to pull stuff, but your approach is so much more genuine and authentic, and it gives you not just good research, it gives you like the opportunity to engage people in a meaningful way who wouldn't normally be on a list. They might not normally come up in a research list, but they should be the priority, right, of engaging the people around you or engaging people who wouldn't normally be. This is important stuff. What other approaches do you take with this, or is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to talk about how you do your research? Because this is different. This is exciting. Like, I'm super jazzed up about what you do.
Yeah. So I recognize that by saying we're going to look in, lower class zip codes and all these things, that is goes right up against, our logic. And some organizations may say they don't have the capacity to do that type of testing and, just experimentation. And I get that. I really do. But I think our missions deserve the effort. And I'll share an example with you. So some may know, some may not. I'm married to a man from Ghana, which is in West Africa, and he's been here for about 7 or 8 years now. And he is Muslim, and he has a masjid, that his home masjid that he goes to and is very active in. Well, the masjid wanted a new building, so in the last not even 24 months, they said, we have to have this campaign to get this building, $500,000. So we're in about 18, 19, 20 months into their fundraising campaign, and they are almost there, just shy. They need like another 100,000. Maybe it's more like 80, 90 now. And I'm like, my mind is just blown whenever he comes and talks about like what they're doing and the progress they're making, because these are first and second generation new Americans. So new Americans, maybe second generation Americans. I think Columbus, Ohio has the second largest population of Ghanaian Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look at that example and it's like, there's a huge opportunity here.
Yeah.
I bet none of the organizations in my hometown are ever going to go and talk to them ever about anything. But yet they're motivated, they're engaged, they're civically minded, they're generous. And this one congregation, which is not a large congregation, has the ability to generate almost $500,000 in less than 24 months.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And that's all the things we look for in board members and volunteers otherwise, and and partners,
yes,
organizational partnerships. Like, that is everything you'd want. That's your dream list right there. Experience fundraising, successful experience fundraising. It doesn't get much better than that.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Love it. I love to have things challenged, right, that are traditional wisdom.
Yes. So we have to
Mm-hmm.
think about how do we engage those people.
Mm-hmm.
But despite the accents, despite the different attire, and that's being a bit presumptive. I don't want to, be stereotypical. Everyone doesn't necessarily have an accent or wear,
Right.
African attire, but a lot of them do. And so, as a traditionally and predominantly white institution, then how does that institution get past their own barriers to engage people that don't look like them, don't talk like them, but still want to come to their institution?
Yeah. Yeah. And you just have to be willing to say, I'm stereotyping right now. I'm thinking in a very narrow way, and I'm just going to throw those assumptions aside and go find out for myself, right?
Yeah.
They're probably they're probably waiting for that engagement. They're probably open to it and wanting it, and they're just so things like that. I think are we have to put our assumptions aside, and that's hard. We are we have those kind of we want to block people into file them away in a category. It's hard to fight against that, but we need to do it.
And I have to just add very quickly, we can do that. It is
Yes.
absolutely possible. We
Yes.
have the ability to do that. I believe
Yes.
in our industry, I believe in our sector, and I believe in human beings. We
Yes.
absolutely can.
I agree with you with that. And we'll end on that because that's a beautiful note on which to end, Regina. This has been wonderful, exceeded my expectations, and they were high. And so I want to invite you back because there's so much more more places we could go with this conversations in a
My
different place.
pleasure.
I really appreciate this. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you for tuning in. Next week we'll have another fun conversation. So every Thursday at 11:30. Please let me know if you have a suggestion. I received one. I'm always open to those. And if you want to be a guest, reach out to me as well. Thank you, and I hope you have a good day.